From the Old Testament, we will read from the 9th chapter from the book of Isaiah, the 1st verse to the 7th verse. Nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who were in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, but in the future he will honor Galilee of the nations, by the way of the sea, beyond Jordan. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness. From that time on and forever, the zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. And from the New Testament, from the book of Luke, the first book of Luke, verses 26 to 38. In the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent the angel Gabriel to the Galilean village of Nazareth, to a virgin engaged to be married to a man descendant from David. His name was Joseph, and the virgin's name Mary. Upon entering, Gabriel greeted her. Good morning. You are beautiful with God's beauty, beautiful inside and out. God be with you. She was thoroughly shaken, wondering what was behind a greeting like that. But the angel assured her, Mary, you have nothing to fear. God has a surprise for you. You will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and call his name Jesus. He will be great, be called Son of the Highest. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David. He will rule Jacob's house forever, no end ever to his kingdom. Mary said to the angel, But how? I've never slept with a man. The angel answered, The Holy Spirit will come upon you. The power of the highest hover over you. Therefore, the child you bring to birth will be called Holy Son of God. And did you know that your cousin Elizabeth conceived a son? Old as she is. Everyone called her barren, and here she is, 6 months pregnant. Nothing, you see, is impossible with God. And Mary said, Yes, I see it all now. I'm the Lord's maid, ready to serve. Let it be with me just as you say. Then the angel left her. This is the word of the Lord.
Friends, let us pray. Almighty God, we give you thanks and praise that we can come to you in this moment, that as we come, you are here with us. That as we engage with these scriptures and spend a moment reflecting on them, you are with us in this time as well. Open our eyes and our hearts to your moving, your directing, and your leading. Help us to see what it is you want us to take from these readings today as you speak into each and every one of our hearts. So may the words of my mouth and the meditation of each and every one of our hearts be pleasing to you, our rock and our Redeemer, Jesus Christ our Lord, now and always. Amen. Friends, as you've already gathered from the service so far, we've entered a new season in the church calendar year, the season of Advent. This being the first season of Advent, or should I say of the new Christian calendar year. Last week, Ian shared with us about Christ the King, and perhaps if you want to take a New Year's from that moment of Christ the King Sunday, this would be, for us, theoretically, the 7th of January for next year, in the world's terms. But in Christian terms, it's the first Sunday of our preparation, the anticipation, the build-up, the spiritually preparing of ourselves for the coming of Christ, the Christ child, Emmanuel, God with us at Christmas. Now talking about Christmas, there's no hints anywhere. But how many shopping days until Christmas? It's 21 shopping days. Now, if you're a parent or grandparent, you're saying, good, Black Friday was good, I got all the discounts and deals I needed, presents are sorted. Or perhaps you're wondering, what do I do during this time? I think for me, as we enter December, there's often that moment of saying, as I prepare for Christmas, I need to think about the meal. Perhaps we're going on holiday and the preparations for holiday. How's my leave looking as we end the year at work? Many of people are in those places of thought at this moment in time. But beyond that, there's also about, what about Christmas Day? Will we go to the 7 o'clock? Or, let's just check the times. I'd like to encourage you to check the times as well. The 7:30 and the 9 o'clock service at Westview. Will you be here celebrating the coming of the Christ child? Will you be at home wrapping and ripping wrapping paper and throwing this wrapping paper everywhere as you unwrap gifts? But to get to the gifts, you need to firstly think about the people you're going to give gifts to. And it's this time of the year that I often stop and say, well, who am I going to give gifts to this year? And then the next question is, what do I get them? I don't know if any of you have ever been on the search for the perfect gift. Anyone here? The perfect gift for that person. And you walk through them all. And you go to the next mall. And you walk through the next mall. And you don't see it. You think, oh, was it at the first mall? Second mall? Is it at the next mall perhaps? And you search and you hunt. Now, guys, I know that as we do this, it's quick in and outs. Ladies, sometimes a little bit longer at times. But we also have those moments of trying to find the perfect gift for the special people in our lives. But how do we know what to give that person? And I think for me, as we approach the Christmas season, we need to ask the question, what is the perfect gift? Perhaps, let me turn the question around. Have you ever received a gift at Christmas? And you unwrapping it, and you know who's given you that gift. You've read the card, it's fantastic. You said, thanks for the gift. And you start to unwrap it. And as you unwrap it, your excitement starts to dwindle. And you say, more socks and soap on the rope. Thanks, in that moment. Or perhaps you've been on the other side of that. You've thought long and hard about the gift you're giving this person. And you stop for a minute and you say, I hope they appreciate the gift. You sit there on Christmas morning and they're wrapping and ripping the wrapping paper. And at that moment they get the gift and they're like, thanks. Not quite what I wanted is the attitude that they bring across to you in that moment. But you know that feeling, I'm sure, of receiving or giving a gift that you don't know quite where it comes from. As we build up to Christmas over the next few weeks, you've still got time to find those perfect gifts for your loved ones. Perhaps have the conversations in secret. You know, what would you like for Christmas? See those questions. And then to prepare yourself for that. But I also want to encourage you to prepare yourself spiritually to receive the perfect gift from God. The gift of Christ at this Christmas time that we're going to be speaking about in our sermon this morning. To help you do that over the next couple of weeks, including today, we're going to be starting our new series called Pauses for Advent. Many of you have been encouraged since last week, this past Monday, to get the book because the devotions actually started on Monday, but it's not too late to begin. It's on a weekly basis. So grab your book. There are some at the back still. Or follow the readings on the bookmark that was handed out last week to us. Or follow us online. Or this will be online as well. So friends, I want to encourage you to just take a moment in preparing yourself as you prepare for everything else that comes with Christmas. To prepare yourself spiritually in the season of Advent, to receive the Christ child, to receive the gift of God coming into this place. Over the next 4 weeks, we're going to be exploring the people who form part of the Nativity. We're going to be exploring Mary this week, Joseph, the Magi, the shepherds, the angels, and of course, we can't forget baby Jesus. I think for me, the most special part of Christmas is that moment of unwrapping the Christ child. I don't know if any of you at your home have a nativity scene that you pull out every year. Grandparents, I'm perhaps talking to you here, or great-grandparents, because sometimes parents may be a bit busy for that. To encourage grandchildren to embrace each of those characters, each of those people that were important in the Christ story of the Nativity. We're going to be doing that over the next couple of weeks ourselves through our preaching and through the devotions. But I'd like you to, if you got one, grab it and go and say, this is Mary. She's the mother of Jesus. She's the one who carried Jesus in her womb. To use a big term, she's the Theotokos, the Christ bearer. As we come this week to begin our series, that's who we're looking at. The Theotokos. The Christ bearer, the one who is the mother of Christ, Mary. But not just as we've done in the years past. Well, this is Mary, the angel visited. That's great. I want you to stop as we go through our sermon today and ask yourself the question, what can I learn from Mary? In her interaction with the angel Gabriel, from what the encounter left her with, but also the way she responded to the encounter. What we can learn from that place and time. I think to be able to help understand where Mary's at, we need to begin by taking a look at where Mary's understanding of what's taking place comes from. And a reading from Isaiah 9. Now, this reading is about 700 years before the coming of Christ. A prophecy of God through the prophet Isaiah to the people of Israel as they were in exile, as they were far away in Babylon from their homeland. They'd been destroyed and disconnected. They'd lost a deep sense of identity of who they were as the people of God. And it's into this place that we have this reading. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatest of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish it. Now, if we stop for a moment and take a look in verse 6, we get the description of the perfect Christmas gift. God's Christmas gift to us, prophesied 700 years before the coming of Christ. You want to dig them out with me here? And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. These are the royal titles that are given to Christ the Messiah, the one who is prophesied about in the coming of Christ. The one that Mary would have heard about many times before, because as Isaiah prophesied this, a hope of peace, joy, and love was born into the darkness of the exile, into the hopelessness of the people in that moment, and light came into the world with the rejoicing of the coming King, the Messiah. Didn't stop 700 years when they said, well, we're still in exile. Lasted another 200 years in exile, and then another 500, almost 500 years until the coming of Christ. And the people hung onto that hope, often referred to as the Messianic hope. Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. You see, that was the expectation of the one who would come and save and set free the people of Israel, the Jewish people, God's people of that time. Now, with this in mind, God's perfect promise of the timeless gift of the Messiah coming. We come to our reading in Luke 1, and we see a definite fulfillment of God's intention and God's promise through the coming of the angel Gabriel. The intention is that God is wanting to show something different is happening. 700 years before that, God sent an angel. There's an angel that is speaking in that moment as well, the angel Gabriel, and he comes with this greeting to Mary, a young Jewish virgin girl. Good morning. You're beautiful with God's beauty. Beautiful inside and out. God be with you. Now, this message says that despite the world in which we find ourselves, perhaps filled with fear, uncertainty, and discord, a message saying that God will be with us. God be with you. That God, into a world ruled by human wants and greeds, sends a message saying, I will show you the way. A message that God is wanting to do something different, is wanting to send a great gift of love to the world through Jesus, the Messiah, the Christ child of Christmas. Emmanuel, God with us, the long-expected Messiah. As he sends that angel Gabriel with the message, good morning. You're beautiful with God's beauty, beautiful inside and out. God be with you. Highly favored, as another version says, of God. You are favored of God. If we were to take it to us today, you are the beloved of God. But it goes on. And the promise is given by Gabriel. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you will name him Jesus. Now, I've put that little bold in there because I want you to understand what Jesus means. Because in this context, it's important. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you will name him God Saves. Isn't there a link here? A link between this long-expected Messiah, the Savior, the one coming to save the people, and God saves? He'll be very great, and he'll be called the Son of the Most High. Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. The Lord God will give you the throne of his ancestor David, and he will reign over Israel forever. His kingdom will never end. You see, this promises of God, God's great love. That say, through sending Jesus, the God saves. The long-awaited Messiah, the Savior, who would reconcile God and God's people. God is doing something different. Now, with that in mind, that God is doing something different, I want you to stop for a moment and think, where's God in your preparations for Christmas? I'd like you to pause and examine your intentions when it comes to your Christmas preparations. What are you preparing yourselves for? Are you preparing yourselves for a massive meal? Ladies, and I'm sure men as well. I mean, we go there and here's the money and, that type of thing. But the ladies are stressing. They're like, what shall we do for starters? Oh, should we do seafood cocktail? Should we have a braai and just do like bread? Ooh, what else would you like to do for starters? Well, what about the mains? Are we going to do 3 meats? Even though it's going to be 30-odd degrees outside? Are we going to do 3 meats and have a heavy European meal? Are we going to do salads and cold meats? You see, all these preparations that are about the meal, about the gift giving, as I spoke earlier on about that, about preparing for the gifts, about family, about holiday, about all the many things that make our minds busy at this time of the year. But have we stopped? Have we paused for a moment to prepare ourselves for the coming of Christ? Of God wanting to do something different in us, through us, and with us. Something new afresh. So what are you preparing yourself for? For a party? Or to celebrate the coming of Christ? The Christ child. The one who is God saves with us in this time. As Mary was approached by the angel, I want to just take some lessons from Mary's response. Mary's initial response was that of fear, confusion, and disturbed. The NIV says, confused and disturbed, Mary tried to think what the angel could mean. I love the way Eugene Peterson puts it. Though she was thoroughly shaken. Doesn't it just bring like a life to it? Thoroughly shaken, wondering what was behind a greeting like that. Perhaps there's fear as we approach Christmas. Maybe it's the first Christmas alone. Maybe there's aspects of our Christmas where we've lost loved ones, where things have changed in our lives. Prepare yourselves during this time to journey with God in that moment. Like Mary, in a response of fear, I think it was a healthy human response. I mean, how would you respond? Imagine for a moment you, Mary, a young, virgin Jewish girl, probably about 13, 14 in age, if not younger. And suddenly a supernatural human being, an angel appears before you, probably about 7 or 8 foot tall. And he says, let's read those words again. Good morning! You're beautiful with God's beauty, beautiful inside and out. God be with you. What's your initial response? Probably gleaming and shining with light. A being that has been in the presence of God, coming to you, bringing you a message from God. How do you respond? Do you stand there and accept this? Or is there perhaps that moment of, uh-oh, what have I done? Or is there something else going on here? How would you respond to that moment? The angel, the supernatural being Gabriel, then brings these words. Mary, you have nothing to fear. I read them again, and perhaps you want to put your name in there. Raymond, whatever your name is, you have nothing to fear. I won't put the rest in because that could be awkward. You have a surprise. God has a surprise for you. And I think we'll leave it at there for us now. God has a surprise for you. You see, in that moment, Mary had found favor in the eyes of God. Was the beloved of God as we are the beloved of God now. And it's in that moment that God had anticipated Mary's human response and of fear and mistrust. So God sent that message of assurance. You have nothing to fear. God has a surprise for you. I suspect that most of us, especially at this time of the year, tend to react to every new and unusual situation from a stance of fear. I think we come from a hermeneutic of suspicion. We come from a background of suspicion. And we need to be careful that fear doesn't overtake us and keep us from seeing what God is doing, what God is wanting to do, and God's presence in that situation. I think we become so fixated on fear that we miss the enormity of God in that moment. Because if we begin with fear, fear is all we're going to get. That pin-eye focus on the object of our fear. But we can learn from God that if we want to love, we need to begin with love. If we want to hope, we need to begin with hope. Because God is the source of that love, of that hope. God shows us that through sending an undeserving gift to us, the baby Jesus, the Messiah, that when we put aside fear and turn those fears over to God, we become able to give and receive love. We become agents of love and of hope to a world that needs it so desperately at this time of the year. We need to begin by loving. How many of you are dreading Christmas Day? Because you know that this person and that person, if they're in the same room, is World War III. You know the people I'm talking about? How about being that agent of love and of peace and of hope and of joy as you prepare yourself for Christmas, knowing what might lay ahead for us? But we need to become agents of hope and of love to the world around us. Can you imagine how different the world would be if all people approach each other from a place beginning with love and in love, and not of suspicion, of mistrust? Let's use a quick example. The guy approaches you at the robots, at the traffic lights. What's the first thing you do? You lock the doors. Can I suggest that the key to love for many of us, and this might sound like a daunting task, but if we look at our readings, our reading from verse 36 to 38, we should see how this is possible. Firstly, the angel Gabriel reminds Mary that there's nothing that is impossible with God. Thanks, Pete. And did you know that your cousin Elizabeth conceived a son? As old as she is, everyone called her barren, and here she is 6 months pregnant. Nothing you see is impossible with God. Can we say that verse together, if you don't mind? Nothing you see is impossible with God. So nothing is impossible with God. And Mary said, yes, I see it all now. I am the Lord's maid, ready to serve. Let it be with me, just as you say. There's a moment in Mary's response where the angel reminds her, and perhaps this message reminds us today, that nothing is impossible with God. That whatever we see coming, whatever we anticipate, nothing is impossible with God. Because if we're rooted in God, and God is our source of love and hope, our strength, then nothing is impossible. You see, overcoming our human response of fear and mistrust and replacing it with love is possible. But only by God's strengthening and the Holy Spirit's movement in our lives at this time. Secondly, Mary responds with that little bit at the end. She says, I am the Lord's servant. It's got here, maid. May everything you have said about me come to be. I see it all now. I'm the Lord's maid, ready to serve. Let it be with me just as you say. Friends, perhaps we need to stop for a moment. Like Mary, she embraced what God was doing, despite the cost that may come with it. We read later on, we'll explore next week about Joseph and Joseph's encounter. But can you imagine suddenly going up to your fiancé and saying, honey, listen, I'm pregnant, and it's not yours? What about family and friends in this very conservative world of that time? She would have been disgraced in her community. A young girl. And she says, let it be with me just as you say. We can continue reading. I'd like to encourage you to read later on about Mary's song, the Magnificat, later on as well. But friends, perhaps let us embrace what God is wanting to do in us and through us in this time of Advent as we take time to seek Christ. To pause for a moment and enter that space of encountering Christ. Because as I close, I want to say the good news this morning is that the God of love and the love of God shown through God's intention and promise, through the message of Gabriel to Mary, speaks of a great hope. A hope that is for all people. That Jesus, the Christ child, the one that is God with us, is God's perfect gift. And that God has the perfect gift for you, for me and for all people. That as we prepare ourselves for Advent, as we prepare ourselves for the coming of the Christ child, let us come with hope of receiving the gift from God. A gift that God has especially for you. The perfect gift that no person could ever give. Let us receive it. And not just keep it in a cupboard till next year, but receive it, unwrap it, and use it. Could I encourage you during this week, and I'd like to invite you as you go into your quiet times, obviously to follow the daily readings and the daily devotional. There are someone set at the back of the church if you still would like, or at the office during the week. Just give the office a call first so they can have some ready for you. But let us take time to pause. Amidst the busyness of our preparations that we've already spoken about in the sermon today, that often, despite work and being on holiday, or whatever that may look like in our lives, there's a busyness that comes with the season. As we prepare ourselves, let us receive afresh the coming Christ child. Let us, through that receiving of Christ child, respond to God's actions within us, to use us to bring to birth love, the love of God to all that we meet, particularly that person that you're dreading to meet on Christmas Day. And that Jesus is born in and through us for the healing of the world. Emmanuel, God with us. Let us pray. Almighty God, we give you thanks and praise that you are present in this moment in time, that you are here with us, and that your love surrounds us in such a deep, intimate way, that as we come to you this morning, we ask, help us, guide us, direct us, and lead us by the impulse of your love. Make us attentive to what it is you're doing in our lives as you shine your light of hope and of love into our lives. That you can make us, Almighty God, people who are able to share that love as you bring it to birth in us. That we can share it and bring it to birth into the world as well. As Mary, the Theotokos, the Christ bearer, carried the Christ child to birth. So help us bring that expectation, that hope, but also a relationship with you, Almighty God, to birth in the world around us. That Jesus is born through us for the healing of the world, for the shining of your light into the darkness that often surrounds us. That brings hope, peace, joy, and love. We ask this in your precious name, Jesus, now and always. Amen.